Sir, thank you, sir. Two questions.
Thank you.
Common questions. One, as far as conflict in the Middle East or Gaza or Hamas and Israel is concerned, first, on October 7, Hamas attacked the innocent people in Israel. Now, innocent people are being killed or they are dying in Gaza because of basics they are not getting. My question is that Hamas may be a common problem for the common people in Gaza, and how can you describe for the common people we are negotiating with Hamas? Is Hamas a terrorist organization or is a political organization?
It is absolutely a terrorist organization.
So why are we negotiating then with them?
Well, we don't. Hamas is holding civilians hostage, including American citizens, and we want to see those American citizens return home. So it's also true that Hamas is one of the parties to this conflict and has the ability to end it. So we think it's appropriate. We're not in direct negotiations with Hamas, but obviously we're engaging with countries in the region, Qatar and Egypt, who have the ability to talk to them. And we think it's appropriate to do so because we want to see these hostages return home, especially the American hostages, but the hostages of Israel and every other country. Remember, there's not just Israeli citizens who are being held hostage, and we believe this is the best way to do so.
Second, sir, Secretary of State and Secretary of Treasury both were in China recently, and both warned Chinese leadership about not to interfere in the U.S. elections and among others. Can you describe that? What kind of warning was, and what was the response from the Chinese leadership?
So I'm not going to speak to that in any level of detail, but the Secretary did make clear, reiterating something that we have a message that we have delivered previously to the Chinese government, that any interference, any attempt to influence our upcoming election is something that would be unacceptable.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just to clarify, you've called the Rafah operation limited, but you also said it had the appearance of being a prelude, your word, to a major operation.
I don't think that's what I said. It's not what I intended. I said that they have number one, they have described it as limited. It looks at this way to not be the major operation that you would see, say, for example, if they entered the neighborhoods where they have ordered evacuations. We don't know if it's a prelude or not. They've made clear that they intend to launch a major military operation, and we have made clear that we are opposed to that. I can't speak to.
So you're not calling it a prelude?
No, I can't speak to whether this is
Yoav
the beginning of that or not.
I'm sorry. Yoav Gallant is touring the Rafah area today, and he said, I directed the IDF to enter the Rafah area, take the crossing, carry out its missions. This operation will continue until we eliminate Hamas in the Rafah area and the entire Gaza Strip. So that doesn't sound limited to me.
So they have made similar statements in the past about what their policy intends to be, and we have made our statements about what our policy is, and we will continue to make that clear. Yeah.
I want to move to another region, Haiti. Do you have any updates for us on where we're at in terms of the deployment of that police force or security force now that the Presidential Council was put into place? What is the status of play on that at this point?
So we welcome the process, the progress in the political process that has taken place. We continue to work with our Kenyan partners and other countries for the deployment of the MSS. In terms of an exact deployment schedule, we have, I think for operational security reasons, not wanted to affix a public date to it, but it's something that we're working to make happen as soon as possible.
But are there any pre-elements, forward people going in now in Haiti from the U.S. or from?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, it's more of a Pentagon question.
Yeah, that's why. That's kind of like why I'm. Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So just back to Rafah. Prior to Israel taking control, Hamas was collecting revenue, as you said, of those goods. Can you go into more detail on how Hamas was benefiting from that crossing, and also how you navigate the fine line of ensuring that they're deprived while also keeping it open?
Well, Hamas has been the government in Gaza, so they were performing, in addition to being a terrorist organization, they were the de facto government in Gaza, and so we're performing government functions, and that includes running a border crossing where you can collect customs. You can also, if you control a border crossing, collect, let's call them more irregular payments, and we have seen both of those things happen. And so it is a legitimate goal to try to shut off and choke off that revenue stream to Hamas. We want to see Rafah open, and so someone needs to be on the Gaza side of Rafah to run that side of the crossing. The Egyptians can't do it. We talked about this very early in the conflict when we were trying to open Rafah in the first place, so someone needs to be there to do it, and we'll continue to work through how to get that gate open and how to keep it open.
And there's a report, can you confirm that there's a plot to assassinate Zelensky and other top Ukrainian figures that failed?
So obviously the Ukrainian government has made an announcement to that effect. We have been in close contact with them about that. I would defer to the Ukrainian government to speak to the details of it, but obviously it just speaks to the depravity that we've seen on display from the Putin regime since the outset of this conflict.
Thank you.
Right.
So given that Israel is pledging to wage an operation in Rafah using U.S. weapons that the U.S. opposes, is there any internal process going on to figure out what went wrong internally? Like how did the process allow the weapons to be shipped and then into a situation in which Israel is going to use them in opposition to what the United States wants done?
I don't think I can answer that question without presupposing a policy decision that we have not yet announced. We have made clear that and I've said it here, what our position is on a major military operation in Rafah, and Israel will make its policy decisions, and we will make ours.
So if they do continue this operation, will it result in a review of what went wrong?
Again, I'm just not going to speak to what policy determinations we might make or what internal kind of mechanisms would go into answering such a question.
Pakistan question real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer recently met with the Pakistan ambassador, and he relayed to the ambassador that Imran Khan's safety in prison was a high priority of the United States. Did he coordinate that conversation with the State Department? Does the State Department share that view that his safety in prison is a high priority of the U.S.?
So I'm not aware of any coordination. It may have happened, may have been conversations between this building and Senator Schumer, his staff, and I'm just not aware of them. It's certainly possible. But obviously we want to see safety and security of every prisoner in Pakistan or anywhere else in the world, something that every person, every detainee, every prisoner is entitled to basic human rights and protection under the law.
Follow, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. U.S. ambassador in Pakistan.
And Donald Bloom met with the current leadership of Imran Khan's party. And after that meeting, there were like dozens of stories circulating in Pakistani media. Could you tell us something about that, as that meeting was arranged on the request of U.S. Ambassador Donald Bloom?
Dozens of stories circulating about a meeting
Different
with our
stories.
ambassador. What a new thing.
Different stories.
I haven't got a Donald Bloom question in a while. Yes, the U.S. Ambassador Donald Bloom met with the leader of the opposition in the National Assembly, Omar Ayub Khan, and other senior members of the opposition to discuss a broad range of issues important to the bilateral relationship. This includes U.S. support for continued economic reforms, human rights, and regional security.
Sir, after that meeting, the leadership of PTI, Imran Khan's party, told media that they have expressed their concerns about human rights violations, fabricated cases against Imran Khan, freedom of speech, and others. What is your position on these issues, sir?
So we have addressed this any number of times, and our position is the same as we have stated it previously, which is we take no position on elections in Pakistan. We take no position with respect to any particular political party. And of course, we want to see basic human rights upheld, as I said in my answer to Ryan's
So
question.
one last question.
Yeah.
Saudi Crown Prince MBS is visiting Pakistan in next few days. Recently, Iranian president was in Pakistan too. So how you see these trips when there is a too much tension in the region?
So certainly we always support diplomatic engagement between our partners. I don't have any further comment on the visit between the Saudi Crown Prince to Pakistan, but it's, that kind of diplomatic engagement is routine and something that we support and encourage. But when it comes to Iran, of course, while we welcome regional de-escalation, we've seen the outbreak of limited conflict between Iran and Pakistan, we do remain skeptical about Iran's intentions, given its continued destabilizing behavior broadly in the region. Take one more, and then we'll wrap for today. You, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to ask you about Rafah. You said you do not want to see a large-scale military operation, but on a scale of limited versus large military operation, like what is acceptable for you when you configure for the concerns of, the lack of humanitarian aid, that this can be a problem. When you talk about the possible displacement of the people who are there already in the region, like, where is this line for you, United States, where you're going to say, like, okay, this is now large scale operation, we don't support that?
I'm not going to get into trying to define it here. I will add, though, that we have had detailed conversations with the Israeli government about this, much more detailed for obvious reasons than what we are willing to say publicly, or what is productive to say publicly, and they know quite clearly what our position is, and I think I'll leave it at that. That wrap for today. Thanks, everyone.
Whatever needs to be done. These are the luxuries of not being careful. Thank you. Exactly. Yeah.
It's connected. Like I just logged on.
But I never saw
It was like you guys have to rotate. We're not going to.
I'm not saying that he should have won in terms of the numbers. I'm saying that was a big moment for him and he just didn't live up to that moment. It was on the so it was on the there were no supporters.
So yeah, celebrated it also. I don't know this, so I feel like it's like going to
Yes, I'm sorry. What's that?
Messianic right now.
I went back and listened because I was
There was that. See, that makes more sense to me, the Obama Messianic than Hillary, you know. He still is. His post-presidency is also good.
Yeah.
That's administrator. I mean, I should get points for remembering his name, but.
I think I'm gonna give him two.
He could have been ambassador to France.
Just two. Sometimes
Charles, was that here?
we don't have very rich.
Chucky Cakes.
Mostly for
Chucky Cakes.
trying to.
That's it.
Yeah. We're quite few.
So that's the history of the White House.
This week they've just been kind of clumsy back.
Then I think Italy was so during the thing presidency there were some countries that got watched because after the North Korea, where was it? And then Richie, so what was the first name?
Alrighty then. Ready to start in 1 minute. Yes.
I didn't know exactly what you were saying. Here we go. Here we go. Keep moving, please.
Nacho frumos ești cu... Thank you.
As soon as you're ready, we're going to go ahead and move everyone out. We've got a briefing that
Mulțumesc.
we're trying not to attend. So if we're all set, we'll go outside. We'll start taking it after the group.
Da, serios, deci... Okay.
Thank you. We're going to escort you all out. It was quick. I wish I could get
I know, it's so complicated. Ridiculous.
Good.
Yeah, but if she's got to get
But I'll sell something in the 6 and then that's what I'll so she can work her way back up to that. You know, I think that's kind of like can't make any okay. And it's 2 of you?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, God bless you. Okay.
Right, is you have to 22 years ago.
I mean, it changed like a month ago, but I
in a weird way, like, you know, like I
couldn't figure out how to get it like
I still have this book that I don't know where it's up, so it wasn't, but I would like to get it. It's the one managing the president's position. Yeah, but so is this going to make like your work life easier to be
Hi.
How are you?
You gonna take pictures of the baby in front of the flowers?
Yeah.
That was
Think about that. I was gonna just give them to friends, but yeah. How are you?
Good. I'm not taking pictures of my babies in front of the flowers either for what it's
You're
worth.
over it.
Well, they're not even that cute anymore.
Oh. Do you have fun on the dinner?
You know what? I had a lot of fun.
No responsibilities?
Like, I had to walk across the stage, which felt like a large responsibility
Yeah.
for myself.
Right.
But I didn't fall.
And Steve sent in the pictures. I took them. I took
No.
a couple pictures.
No, I don't think so.
What's your
Do you
have the? Can you do this thing?
I can turn it on.
Or just text me?
What is that called? AirDrop? Bringing devices together. Here we go.
Oh, share. Okay.
Oh, yay. No, all I got was your contact.
oh yes,
977.
Yes, 9974446. I think you already have my number.
Yeah, I'm on. Okay. Let me work on that.
Okay.
I'll send you them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was playing with it.
spend our time somewhere. So I've had far less time to move, but I've also had far less stuff. Maybe not now, but now I feel like I have, God, the Lego. And I was talking with Lego building a new house.
White House light. Still waiting for the station something.
We're out of the trenches of Lego ownership. I'm now in the part where I'm like, children think that Legos are like basically like anti-personnel lines. They just scatter them around. Is that not true, Tam?
And you know what is really painful to step on? Like Lego.
My child really thinks that it's like an anti-personnel lining.
No,
it just scatters it.
Mine are not purposely.
Mine is not.
They're just chaotic.
Find solace in weird places. I'm trying to make you feel better about your current situation, having to empty a house after 22 years. Whereas, like, I live in fear that I'm going to find like bananas when I clean your room. And in that case, like, what food am I going to find in this room? So at least there's some nasty surprises like that. I'm pretty sure by this point might be fossilized.
Here we go on.
Not like we haven't had any nice ones.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
I was thinking, how are we going to get it out? So I was trying to think of a few things, but I was like, instead of troubleshooting this, I'm just going to get it out of here.
Well, when I was trying to figure out the camera, two things.
I'll fix it.
He's back there, he just went in there.
Yeah, I'll fix him.
Okay.
For the record, I had to put it back in front of the first one, I was, I got that one, and then I'll shut it. Figure out what He's dying to. Look at his face. Get out. Just get out. Oh. Did you think the guy on top was going to start talking?
No, that was me folding.
Because I couldn't figure out how to turn it on. I figured out how to turn it on. well. That's right, I had a small
Like I said, I was more concerned about getting it out and trying to figure out a solution than I was trying to fix the problem.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll have more fun now. So, don't blame me. See you later.
It's like if there's something.
I'll make sure to be there.
Aid is continuing to get loaded on once the commander feels that the Sagamore is ready to leave and that the sea states have calmed. We will position the JLOTs into place. I don't have an exact date for you because it is, of course, weather and environment depending, but we're hoping for later this week. But that does depend, of course, on the environmental conditions and security conditions as well. But right now we're focused on the environmental conditions surrounding the anchoring of that pier.
Laura. Thanks, Sabrina. I have one follow-up and then a different question. Sure. On the Sagamore, how much aid can that ship hold in terms of truckloads? And is this the only ship that's taking advantage of the pier? I guess I'm wondering kind of the throughput of aid and how that's going to work. How many trucks today?
I don't have an exact estimate on how many like pallets it can load. I'm happy to get back to you on that one. I think it will vary just on how much, different things that are packed onto it. And then, I'm sorry, in terms of, will this be the only one going back and forth from the
I'm trying to get at a senior defense official told us, I think last week, that the JLOTS is going to be able to provide 150 trucks a day at full operational capability. Yeah. But that just seems low to me, considering that it's a maritime route. It seems like a ship would hold more than that. So I'm wondering.
Well, I mean, you have to remember this is a temporary pier. This is not the best way to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. The best way are through those land routes. And we do want to see those opened up. We do want to see aid continue to flow in through those land crossings. This is just one. It's meant to help augment, to help complement other ways that aid can get in, not just through land routes, but of course we're also doing those airdrops that you continue to see us do on a regular basis. I mean, 150 trucks is at its, when it's fully operational. I think what you're going to see at the very beginning is a crawl, walk, run scenario. Is we're going to start with, an additional small amount of aid trucks to flow in to make sure that the system works, that the distribution works, and then you'll see that increase, of course, when we get to full operational capacity. But that's something that the commander is continuing to work through. For more aid questions on the Sagamore and what it's holding, I would refer you to USAID.
And then just on a separate topic, is the U.S. considering the use of private military companies to help distribute aid in Gaza?
I'm not aware of that, but that's something that USAID would be able to speak more to the distribution of aid once it gets into Gaza. So I'd refer you to them. I also realized that you asked about the Sagamore being the only ship going back and forth. Just as a reminder, commercial ships can also go up to that floating pier. It's the military ships, the LCUs and the LSVs, that take the aid from the floating pier to the causeway. That is only military. But commercial ships can go up once other ships can, once aid is loaded in Cyprus, inspected, it goes to the floating pier. Tom.
The U.S. has asked for a humanitarian plan before any Rafah operation. Have you guys received anything from the Israelis about how they're going to handle humanitarian effort, especially if Rafah gate closes?
Well, we've had conversations with the Israelis. There was a delegation here a few weeks ago that gave a general, broad overview of their plans. We are not supportive of a large ground incursion into Rafah. We are very concerned that there are over 1 million people sheltering there. We want to make sure that civilian casualties are limited, that there is no harm done. So we have made those concerns voiced both publicly and privately.
Can you give us a sense of what they said to you about their humanitarian plan?
I'm, as you can appreciate, just not going to get into closed-door discussions. But as you know, and as we regularly read out, the Secretary has regular calls with Minister Gallant and other folks from this building with their counterparts as well. So we're certainly in touch with the Israelis. But we certainly do not support and have expressed our views on a major ground operation within Rafah.
Can you at least say you're satisfied with what you're hearing about their humanitarian plan?
I mean, again, I'm not going to get into private conversations. We want to see a concrete plan that will take into account the over 1 million people that are there right now. We don't support a large ground operation into Rafah. Idris, and I'll work my way down.
Yesterday, I think Pat mentioned the security situation as one of the factors that could impact the timing of the pier of the coast of Gaza. Have the Israeli strikes and sort of limited operation in Rafah changed your view of the security situation? Are you now more concerned about it, given what happened yesterday in Rafah?
We're certainly taking into account the security consideration, but still nothing has changed. We're still moving forward with the implementation of JLOTS. We do need these sea state conditions to steady, and until they do, we're just not able to move that into its location at this time. But of course, the security situation is something that we're going to monitor, and if that does impact anything when it comes to the JLOTS mission, we would let you know.
And I realize your policy on sending weapons to Israel as a whole has not changed, but officials are saying some shipments have been paused. What message are you trying to send to Israel with those pause in shipments?
So I've seen those reports. I don't have a comment, and I certainly wouldn't comment on specific cases or shipments. What I can reiterate is that our commitment to Israel's security remains ironclad. You've seen that since October 7th. You've seen us surge security assistance to Israel. You've seen us come to the defense of Israel as recently as a few weeks ago when Iran launched attacks towards Israel, we also were able to pass an emergency supplemental that surged additional security assistance to Israel. So while I'm not going to comment any further, I can tell you that our commitments to Israel's security remains the same. Fadi.
Thank you, Sabrina. Were you given any heads up from your Israeli counterparts about this latest operation into Rafah? What is your understanding? You said we do not support the major operation. Is this part of a major operation or limited? What is the information available to you?
Our understanding is that this was a very limited operation designed to cut off Hamas's ability to smuggle more weapons and funding into Gaza. That is our understanding right now. This just happened, I think, very early morning hours here. So we're monitoring the situation. We're in touch with our Israeli counterparts. We're going to see how this unfolds, but I just don't have more for you to offer on like what this operation is other than that.
Okay, you, according to the UNRWA, this operation and prior Israeli steps basically cut off all humanitarian aid into Gaza. All crossings are shut down. Salim, this one area, Rafah, obviously. You've been insisting, and the Secretary in every readout, that there should be an urgent increase in humanitarian aid. Is this operation and the closing of the Rafah crossing meet your objectives in terms of your humanitarian situation in Gaza?
Well, we don't support the closing of these land routes. We want to see humanitarian aid to continue to get in. And so I think that was something that the president spoke to in his call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, is that we do want to see these crossings open. Kerem Shalom has been closed for, I think, a bit now. So we do want to see more aid be able to get through these crossings. That is a commitment that the Israeli government has made that they will. Again, we are continuing to monitor the situation on the ground. To Laura's question earlier, we know land routes are the best, most effective, efficient way to get humanitarian aid in. And we know that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire. And so people need the medical supplies, the food, the water. That is something that we want to see continue to get in. And we have been told that these crossings will open back up. In the meantime, we've also continued to conduct humanitarian airdrops within Gaza. And should we get to the time and point where we're able to position this temporary pier off the coast of Gaza, that will also help with humanitarian aid getting in. Oren.
A question on Rafah to follow up on Fadi,
Sure.
and then a question on the soldier in Russia.
Okay.
In the discussions about what you call the general broad overview of Israel's Rafah plans, was there discussion about this limited operation? Or was there no discussion about this previously between America and Israel?
So I don't have more to share in terms of the conversation between Minister Golan and Secretary Austin. But as you can appreciate, they talk pretty regularly. Their conversations are very direct, very frank with each other. But I'm just not going to go into more details on that.
Is there a timeline on how soon Rafah could function again as one of the most important crossings?
That would be something for the Israeli government to speak to. I can't speak to that.
And then the follow-up question on Staff Sergeant Gordon Black. Is there any suspicion or concern that in his relationship with his Russian girlfriend or while in Russia he compromised sensitive information? And is that part of the ongoing investigation?
I'd refer you to Army for more information on that. As I mentioned, there is an administrative investigation underway to determine the facts, to determine what exactly happened here, surrounding his travel, but I just don't have more for you on that. Yes, Joe.
Thanks. The Biden administration is required to notify Congress, I think by tomorrow, if Israel violated international law or withheld humanitarian aid since October. Is it the department? What's the department's assessment in terms of either one of those? Have they violated or have they withheld humanitarian aid?
So I believe you're referring to the NSM, and that's something that I would have to refer you to state to speak to.
But has the Pentagon assessed that Israel has violated international law or withheld humanitarian aid?
I don't have anything to add on to this one. This is something that the State Department is putting together. It's a report to Congress that is, due every however many increments, but I just don't have more at this time to offer on the NSM in particular.
That being said, Human Rights Watch came out with a report and said there was a March 27th attack on emergency and relief workers, several of them, in southern Lebanon by Israel, and they say that a U.S.-made JDAM was used, as well as a 500-pound Israeli bomb. It killed, like I said, these several individuals who were civilians, and there's been no evidence of a military target at the site. Are you guys aware of this? How close? I mean, you've said before that there are no conditions on U.S. military weapons provided to Israel. Are you guys tracking these kinds of things at all, and are you aware of this attack?
So I'm not going to get into specific incidents, and I can't confirm those reports that you're citing U.S. weapons being used. What I can tell you is that we have been very clear that we want to see Israel comply with humanitarian laws and the laws of armed conflict. This is something that it's an interagency process that between the State Department, other agencies, we are reviewing. Our findings will also go into the NSM. For more on that, I'm just not going to get ahead of that process. As you can appreciate, I'd refer you to the State Department.
Just one last one. The Ike has returned to the Red Sea. We saw a statement a couple weeks ago now that it had gone into the Sixth Fleet into Europe. Can you say anything about? And then on April 23rd, CENTCOM released or put out a tweet and said there were F-16s deployed to the AOR, didn't specify where. Can you say anything about, can you give us any updates on this, mission to counter or deter the Houthis? Has it been deployed? Has the deployment been extended?
So I don't have anything for you on any changes to our force posture with the Ike or anything additional. You have the positioning of our assets there for the exact reason to help with deterrence and our efforts when it comes to Operation Prosperity Guardian, which is to ensure that commercial shipping through the Red Sea, the BAM, the Gulf of Aden can continue freely without the harassment of Houthi attacks. You've seen CENTCOM put out regular updates on when there are engagements, but I don't have anything more to read out at this time on the Ike. Liz.
Thanks. Last week, Secretary Austin told lawmakers he was concerned over a, quote, lack of execution in terms of Israel's plans to evacuate civilians from Gaza. Is that still the case? Is he still concerned about the lack of execution?
I think we are concerned about any type of ground operation, large ground operation within Rafah that does not take into account that very large civilian population. So yes, the Secretary's words still absolutely stand to today.
Follow up from Joseph's question. So was the USS Ike brought back into the Red Sea to counter the Houthis because there were increased attacks when it was in the Eastern Med?
Again, I don't have the list of attacks that happened when she was not in the Red Sea, but we have other partner nations that are part of Operation Prosperity Guardian and others that are not, that were engaging when the Houthis did fire attacks unlawfully at commercial vessels. I think I read out when I said that she would be back soon. She has returned, but I just don't have more for you on anything additional or any extension. I'm just going to go to the phones before I forget, and then come back into the room here. Jared Zuba, I'll monitor.
Hi, Sabrina. Thanks for doing this. I understand that Israeli officials told White House counterparts that last night's operation in Rafah was limited. But what preparations are you seeing the Israeli military make? Does it look like they're setting up for broader ground clearing, major ground operations, or does it look like they're preparing for something more precise and targeted and surgical? Thanks.
Thanks, Jared, for the question. So in terms of what they're doing, their actual planning, when it comes to any operation, I would refer you to the IDF to speak to that. What I can tell you, and I'm not trying to sound like a broken record here, what I can tell you is publicly and privately, we've been very clear that we do not support a large ground incursion into Rafah, given the incredibly large civilian population that is currently sheltered there. And so, I just have to reiterate that point again. All right. Next question, JJ Green, WTOP.
Hey, Sabrina, thank you. Two quick questions about the Staff Sergeant Black. First one, can you address the significance of an active duty service member being in Russian custody, given Russia's efforts to, essentially seek out and find and capture Americans and to use them for political purposes or geopolitical purposes? Can you address the significance first of an active duty U.S. service member being in Russian custody?
Thanks, JJ. So before we start going down this line, I would just remind you that the Army is looking into this. They have an administrative investigation underway to determine the facts and circumstances around this travel. You have to remember that, yes, this is an active duty service member, but he was on leave at the time. And so, all we know is that he went to Russia for personal reasons. I don't have more to share as that the Army is continuing to look into this incident. And for further questions on his condition or next steps, I'd refer you to the State Department for more on that. And I'm sorry, did you have a follow-up?
Actually, I'll skip that, but thank you for answering that question.
Of course. All right, I'll come back in the room. Yes, right over here.
Thank you, Sabrina. The ceasefire proposal that Hamas said they will accept it is the same offer that's been on the table for a long time. And have you reviewed it with your partners?
So I would refer you to the State Department, and as you are probably aware, Bill Burns is in the region and sort of leading these negotiations. So I don't want to speak from here about the ceasefire or hostage negotiations that are taking place, other than that they are underway. And, we have a representative at the table as well, working to see to ensure that a ceasefire could be put into place. If a ceasefire were to be put into place, that obviously would increase chances of more humanitarian aid to get in to Gaza, and of course release more hostages, which is obviously something we want to see.
One question on Russia. Vladimir Putin ordered his forces to rehearse for a non-strategic nuclear weapon drill. How do you look at it? And have you seen any change in Russia's posture on nuclear weapons?
How do we look at what Russia announced? We look at that as completely irresponsible. We have not seen any reason to adjust our own nuclear posture. We haven't seen any indications that Russia plans to use a nuclear weapon, but it's deeply irresponsible, and we're going to continue to monitor what's happening in the region. Yeah.
Thank you, Sabrina. You've been saying for months now, this administration, that you're against a major military operation in Rafah.
Yeah.
And they told over 100,000 people to evacuate in eastern Rafah, and that sounds like a lot of people. So what's the definition of a major military operation? What makes a limited military operation? What's a major military operation? Is there an acceptable number of civilians that can be put at greater risk for the Pentagon? Like, how do we know what's major?
Sure. Look, I'm, as you can appreciate, not going to get into more specifics on like their operations and some of the things that they brief us on. A major military operation would put at risk civilian lives. Anything that puts at risk civilian lives within Rafah is something that we are not supportive of. We do not want to see a population with over 1 million people who were, directed there when other operations were going on in the north and the west were forced into Rafah. We don't want to see the civilian population put at risk, knowing that also there is tremendous hurdles of also getting humanitarian aid in, medical supplies in. And so any type of military operation must take into account that large concentration of civilians. And right now we haven't seen we need to see a credible plan that would protect those civilians. And so we're continuing to urge and speak to our Israeli counterparts about that plan. And I'll just leave it at that.
So that, over 100,000 people were told to leave the area. That sounds like an alarming development because they can be put at greater risk. So this line that's drawn in the sand, how do you make sure that Israel doesn't cross that?
Yeah, again, I'm not putting a specific number on it, on like how many people need to leave or how many, what a large-scale operation looks like, because I'm not going to detail their own plans and what they share with us. That's something for them to speak to. What I can tell you is we have a large population of civilians that are sheltered in Rafah. They need to be protected if there is any type of operation or any type of major ground incursion into Rafah, and we want to see those civilians protected. And to move over 1 million people, that's going to take a lot of time. So we're continuing to work with our Israeli counterparts, and I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, in the back, Carla.
Thanks. VOA was told by a U.S. military official that in Niger that some of the diplomatic clearances for flights have been denied. That's forced extended deployments. The day-to-day life sustainment is continuing via commercial contract transportation. these raise a lot of questions. I mean, what's going on with the U.S. forces in Niger right now? Are they allowed to leave? Are they getting the medical supplies and equipment and ammunition, et cetera, everything that they need? And what reason is Niger giving the Pentagon for why they're denying some of the diplomatic clearances?
I direct you to the CNSP to speak to why they're denying some of the diplomatic clearances. We are working with the CNSP on what our orderly withdrawal looks like. As of right now, our forces in Niger still continue to have access to the necessary food, water, medical supplies that they need. But this is, of course, something that we are working towards on what that orderly withdrawal looks like. There have been some cases where some of our service members have left Niger for unforeseen circumstances. Right now, as I think we briefed a few weeks ago, we will have another delegation led by someone from the Department of Defense that will go to Niamey to continue these conversations about the orderly withdrawal. That visit hasn't happened yet. So until that does, and until parameters are put around for these negotiations on what the orderly withdrawal looks like, we're still in a bit of this holding pattern until we can have those conversations. Right.
Real quickly, if I
Sure.
may, on Russia, there have been requests for the Pentagon to kind of detail how Russia is able to use Starlink, because Starlink is also contracted with DoD. Do you have any details to provide on how Russia is able to use that on the battlefield and what the Pentagon and others are doing to try to prevent that from happening?
I don't have anything specific on Russia using Starlink. As you know, our contract with Starlink is for the Ukrainians to use, but I don't have anything more specific on Russia using Starlink. Rio.
Yeah, thanks so much. My question is about the South China Sea. Recently, we have seen the Chinese dangerous actions towards Philippines vessels, but recently, Chinese government argued that there was a temporary special agreement with the former Philippine President Duterte in 2016, and about the restricted access by Philippine vessels, and China accused the Philippine side of the recent tensions. So can I ask for your comment on this Chinese claim?
Are you talking about like the firing of water cannons, things like that towards Philippine vessels?
Yes, and China claims that there was a hidden agreement with the Philippine side.
I'm not exactly clear, or maybe not understanding about an agreement that you're referring to, but of course we continue to monitor what's happening in the South China Sea. We continue to be alarmed when these incidents happen, whether it be with Philippine vessels or other vessels. We want to be able to see the freedom of navigation to be upheld. So of course we're going to continue to monitor what's happening there with our partners and allies. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is about another country in Africa, Chad. Could you give me the update on the situation in Chad? Has the withdrawal been completed, or are there any U.S. personnel remaining in the country?
Thanks for the question. So I actually don't have much of an update other than what we provided last week, which is that there were some military personnel that did leave the country, some of which were already scheduled to rotate out. We do still have military personnel in the country at the embassy, but I don't have more of an update for you on that, other than that's basically where we were last week.
So the situation has not been changed because there was a presidential election yesterday. Or
2 days.
Yeah.
Today, yeah. We're continuing our conversations with the government, but I just don't have more to share at this time. I'll come back in a sec. Let me just go. I have 2 more on the phones, and then happy to come back in the room. Heather, USNI.
Thanks so much. So the Houthis have said that they're going to stop all ships that enter their operation or zone of operation in the Red Sea. So I have, as well as target ships that they can reach with any of their weapons, including in the Med. So I have 2 questions. The first is if there's been any talk of updating the presence in the Red Sea in order to combat this latest threat. And then the second one, is there any concerns about, or I guess, how is the U.S. prepared to protect ships that are going to be bringing in aid in the Med to the temporary pier from any potential Houthi attacks, considering that the Houthis might not recognize those as aid ships versus commercial ships going towards Israel?
Okay, thanks, Heather, for the question. I will be candid, I missed a bit of the first part, but in terms of aid ships getting into the Eastern Med, and you're talking about aid being transported from the floating pier to the causeway, as we have said before, we have assurances from the IDF that they would be providing security around that transport. So whether it's any attacks from any group, the IDF, of course, will be providing that security. In terms of, and I'm apologies, I did miss a little bit of the first part of your question. In terms of any posture changes in the Red Sea, there are no posture changes. Again, Operation Prosperity Guardian is something that continues to work every single day in a coalition to ensure the freedom of navigation through the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. I don't have any posture changes to announce today from the podium. Okay, and then last question from the phone, and I'm happy to come back in the room. Jeff Shogel, Task and Purpose.
Thank you. I understand the Army has launched an administrative investigation into Staff Sergeant Black. I'm just curious, does DoD have any indications that he may have been lured to Russia as part of an effort by Russian intelligence to detain him?
Jeff, appreciate the question. This is something that the Army is looking into, which is why they've launched an investigation to determine the facts and the circumstances of his travel. And I just don't have anything more to add at this time. Happy to come back in the room. Okay, we'll do two more. Joe and three more.
Egyptian media is showing pictures that General Kirill is in Egypt.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what he's doing there and if he has any other scheduled?
I'd refer you to CENTCOM for more details. I don't have more on his travel. He does, regularly travel to the region. I think he was there, if not last week, the week before. But I don't know his other scheduled stops. But CENTCOM would be able to provide that information.
You wouldn't be able to tell me if that's any part of Director Burns' travel to Egypt as well today.
Not to my awareness, no. Fadi and then Aaron.
Sabrina, my question about this Israeli invasion of Rafah, you said it's your understanding this is a limited operation. It aims to or at cutting off Hamas capabilities or ability to smuggle weapons and money. However, the process of bringing humanitarian aid through Rafah is controlled by both Egypt and Israel. And Israelis do screen shipments before they get into Rafah. Were you presented by any information from Israel that proves that still Hamas has the ability to smuggle weapons and money through Rafah?
So Fadi is, yep.
And I just want to note that international organizations, including the UN and humanitarian and NGOs, have been complaining about Israel measures that are delaying the entry of humanitarian aid to Rafah through screening and other steps.
Well, I think we've also been very public in our
Process.
well,
so
just
why the
let me
operation to control that?
Let me just finish. So we've been very public and called from this podium, from other podiums across, the interagency, that we want to see more humanitarian aid get into Gaza. It was directed by the president that we set up a maritime corridor to surge aid in because not enough is getting in. So we also are concerned with how much aid is getting in to Gaza, and that's also why you've seen CENTCOM take the measures that they have to do these airdrops. So I appreciate the question, but I think also you have to remember that this government has been calling for it repeatedly. We want to see more. To your question on Hamas and being able to smuggle weapons. Unfortunately, I just can't speak to the intelligence on that. But what I can tell you is that we're continuing to monitor the situation on the ground. We've been very clear about any type of large-scale incursion into Rafah, and we know how large that population is down there, and we know how dire the humanitarian situation is. So we do not want to see a large-scale ground incursion into Rafah. Again, we're continuing to monitor what's happening on the ground. This just happened earlier, early hours this morning. So I just don't have more to share this time.
So
Sure.
I understand, and your point is well taken. I'm not talking about the U.S. government effort to bring in more aid or complaining about, but this shows the contradiction which is to say Israel is in control of what flows or does not flow into Gaza without controlling Rafah, where they actually had that incursion or invasion. So are you taking what the Israelis are providing you at face value in terms of the aim of this operation is to cut off their ability to smuggle weapons and money, or are you going to actually look into those allegations?
We believe what they are saying, that this was a limited operation, that it was to cut off the movement, the traffic of weapons into Gaza through the Rafah crossing. But again, it's something that we're going to continue to monitor. This just happened earlier, a few hours ago. So let us continue to monitor what's happening on the ground. Aaron, last question.
Yes, with Israel, you keep using the word ironclad, but now how is it such an ironclad relationship when we have, we're expected to delay the shipments of munitions there? So what makes it so ironclad now that we're delaying shipments?
Well, what makes it ironclad, Aaron, is since October 7th, you've seen this government surge humanitarian security assistance and humanitarian support to Israel. So let me just finish. So you've seen us continue to support Israel. I don't need to remind you of the attack that happened a few weeks ago on Israel from Iran, where the U.S. partnered with Israel and other coalition forces to defeat that attack. Again, I don't have a comment on specific cases or shipments, but what I can tell you is through our actions and through what you've seen since October 7th, that's what we mean when our commitment to Israel is ironclad, because we continue to stand by our partner and ally in their fight against a terrorist organization who continues to use civilians as human shields. But we also have hard conversations with our friends. And that's what you continue to see the secretary do at his level and others across this, across the interagency do as well.
So yesterday morning, with General Ryder, he stated that we had not seen a detailed plan about Rafah. Had we seen any plan prior to them entering Rafah?
Well, as I mentioned, and a few weeks ago, there was a delegation that was here that, briefed us broadly on their plans for Rafah. We have continued to engage the Israelis, and I think there was a readout at that time from the White House on some of those meetings. We're continuing to engage our Israeli counterparts. I just don't have more to share on their plans.
Not the delegation, but yesterday before they entered, did we know that they were going to go? Had they talked to Secretary Austin prior to entering a couple hours before?
Yeah, I think I answered that. I think Oren asked that question. Look, I'm just not going to get into more details on the private conversations between Secretary Austin and Minister Gallant. Those conversations do happen often. They're frank. They're very direct. And I'll just leave it at that.
Do you think they're listening to Secretary Austin?
I do. I do actually think that. And the reason why is because since the beginning, we have seen the Israelis, the IDF, make decisions that have been influenced and impacted by conversations with the secretary and other people across this department and the interagency. So yes, we do feel like they are listening. Okay, thanks everyone.
And it is beneath anyone to be sharing that kind of material. And the actions in the video are beneath any American. And so it is insulting to everyone who has to view it. And to act like it.
Just one follow-up. Congressman Mike Collins of Georgia reposted that video and wrote, "Ole Miss taking care of business." Any reaction to him and that comment?
And I think I just said it's beneath any person to be sharing that video. It's beneath any elected official or a leader to be sharing that kind of material, and the actions in that video is beneath of who we are supposed to be. You know, it is what we saw in that video is certainly it's sickening. It is sickening.
Follow up on the police response. President Biden has condemned violent protests on campus. He didn't address the police response. What do you think about the arrests of hundreds of students? Is that the response the White House likes to see?
I'm sorry. Can you start that question again?
What do you think about the arrests of hundreds of students on campus? Is that the police response the White House likes to see?
You know, I've spoken about this last week, and I have said that, you know, these are incredibly difficult times. And we understand what people are feeling and the pain that they're feeling. And in these times, it could be, you know, it could be incredibly difficult, even for law enforcement. And I said this last week, and I'll continue to say that. And what I will add is it is important that all Americans, and I've said this before, have the right to peacefully protest within the law, and it should be their right to peacefully protest. But when someone is unlawfully taking over a building or vandalizing, that is not peacefully protesting. That is just not what peacefully protesting looks like. And so we will call that out. I'm not going to speak to arrest. That is something that local authorities can speak to directly. Can't speak to that, but we will continue to reiterate the fact that all Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law. Go ahead, Aria.
Thank you so much. In his remarks this morning, the president mentioned Jewish students having been attacked, harassed, and blocked. Does the White House have an estimate of how many anti-Semitic incidents actually took place or were reported during the protest, either like physical abuse or verbal attacks?
I would refer you to Department of Justice or local law enforcement. I don't have a number for you to share with you at this time, but look, we've seen an uptick in anti-Semitism. That's what we have seen in the last couple of months. It is abhorrent. We have to call that out. And that was part of the president's speech as well. We got to take action to call out hate. And so we're going to continue to do that. As far as any numbers, we'd certainly refer you to local government or the Department of Justice. Go, Jackie.
Thank you, Corinne. Hearing all of your answers on the responsibility to call out anti-Semitism, when does it become the president's responsibility or the administration's responsibility to call on some of these local governments? Because this DC situation at GW, obviously we talked yesterday about how GW asked for police to intervene, they ignored it, that call's been escalated up to the mayor, it's still been unanswered. The president said today that, you know, hate speech, acts of violence, vandalism against the law. Yeah. And you have an encampment that we could literally walk to from here where you had protesters who the university has said may not even be affiliated with the school, carrying out a mock trial, calling for beheadings of school leadership. So at what point is it the responsibility of the federal government to call on some of these local entities to take action?
So when it comes to local entities, it is up to them to take whatever action that they deem is necessary. We're talking about colleges, we're talking about universities. It is up to them to decide on. We've been very clear. Wait,
that's where we are.
We've been very clear on that. When it comes to taking action, you're talking about a president who moved forward with the first ever U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. He has taken action. We're talking about more than 100 new actions, and then on top of that, when he first announced it back in May of 2023, we took some actions today. And so we're going to, and when we talk about actions, we're talking about the Department of Education, we're talking about Homeland Security, we're talking about a whole of government effort to deal with what we're seeing, this uptick that we're seeing in anti-Semitism. So there are 4 pillars of that. We're going to continue to take actions on this. We're going to continue to work with I talked about the Department of Education, Secretary Cardona sending out letters to his colleagues, and in that we have said to them, if there are trainings that they need, if there are assistance that they need, we are willing to work with them. As it relates to law enforcement, that is something that colleges and universities and local government have to decide on. But we've put forward something that no other president has ever done, because we see what is happening with anti-Semitism. We see that it is something that this president needs to speak to and act on, and we've done just that.
Just on the messaging around the administration's ironclad commitment to Israel, how can the U.S. have ironclad commitment on one hand and then on another hand slow walk arms sales? I mean, the president said that the supplemental was imperative, and now this. How do you square that?
So I'm not going to speak to the second part of your question. I just said in earlier answering to one of your colleagues, not going to speak to cases, and as you just stated in your question, our commitment to Israel's security is indeed ironclad, and we proved that. We proved that in getting that supplemental done. That is going to be incredibly important to Ukraine, to Israel, to making sure humanitarian aid gets into Gaza, gets to Sudan, gets to Haiti and other places across the globe that need that humanitarian aid. All of those things are important. 2 things could be true in the sense of having those conversations, tough, direct conversations with our counterparts in Israel, the president having his conversation with his counterpart, obviously the prime minister, and making sure that citizens' lives are protected, and getting that commitment. So 2 of those things could be true. I'm not going to speak to your question about arms sales. I'm not going to speak to that. I'm not going to speak to cases, but I will continue to commit, and the president's continue to commit, as you heard from him today in his speech, that his commitment to Israel's security is ironclad.
If you won't talk to us about it, will you commit that the administration would answer to Congress about this question of the arms sales? Will administration officials answer questions from lawmakers?
That's up to Congress to decide on how they want to address any questions that they have with us. I have not seen those requests. What I can tell you is our commitment to Israel's security is ironclad, and we've proved that. We proved that many times over and over since October 7th. All right, guys, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Siamo pezzi in tutto. Ali kada se krenemo moj, ali bukvalno na samom kraju. Hvala. Kome još treba?
最关键东西没忘了拍摄键了，家里收入倒是拍上了，搬回家里了。黄先生现场在那找照片。开车下车走飞机，开不到2个档，卡住了，卡收了。卡会卡按钮不好。